right, welcome back to Foiling Week 2021 and the Gurit Forum. I am your host, Chris Museler. And I have to say, of all the topics that we're talking about in Foiling Week, there's not one that makes me and everyone else feel like more like a kid in a candy store than talking about the outright sailing speed record. I mean, from as far back as I can remember when I was a kid looking at crossbow from England and Weymouth Speed Week and the early windsurfers, and I know our guests were involved in a lot of these projects going forward. That's it. And hydrofoiling is all about speed and efficiency. So first of all, we have Bruno Gentoli, our Foiling Week event manager and our kind of guiding light as far as the Gurit Forum is concerned. And our guests are Don Montague from California, and we'll be talking about a lot of his projects, including the Kite Boat project. And then Paul Larson. Paul, where am I calling you from? Or where am I calling you, actually?
I'm in Wales at the moment.
You're in Wales?
I'm in sunny Wales, believe it or not. So,
I don't believe it.
I'm heading back to Weymouth tonight, but Wales right now.
Awesome.
They do have internet, yeah.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's proof is in the pudding. And Paul is, am I right in saying that you and your project are the current holder of the outright world sailing speed record, correct? The 500-meter speed record?
That's correct. And the assassins are forming, but we've still got it this year. So
cool. And I have it written down. It was 65.45 knots. Does that sound right?
Correct.
Okay, cool. Well, I want to start this conversation with everyone before we get into the details of what's going on at present and then what are the limits to speed sailing. We'll start with Don. I never got to talk to you about when, I'm explaining to you that in yacht racing and cruising, I would see the Weymouth Speed Week. But when was the first time like an outright speed record kind of crossed into your universe?
I mean, I was involved early with windsurfing when it was on the canal.
Yeah, the French Trench kind of thing?
Yeah. I wasn't actually competing. I was helping some of the sailors there. I think at the time I was with Simmer Style.
Oh, cool.
And Kirk Darrow was involved back then for that brand. So I think that's the first time that I really got close to it. I raced in the World Cup, but that was never really speed trials or anything in windsurfing days. And then in kiting, I made some kites for Robbie, who tried to break some records with the kite early on. I think for a little bit he went fast, but I think that was all broken pretty quickly by the French. Yeah. So I didn't really spend a lot of time on speed. I was more innovating and just trying to get things to move and fly.
And fast forward to the Kite Boat project. I mean, that's when you start to intersect with the same challenges like Paul has and the other people that seek those speed records.
Yeah, I mean, it was for us, it was interesting to try to like double or triple wind speed. So
a slightly different criteria.
Yeah, we were getting efficient so that we could get in 10 knots, we could go 30. Right. And with a bow with like 5 people on it. So not really speed trials, and we didn't do it on purpose. It just like worked out. Like all of a sudden, wow, but we better work more on this. This is really fun. And the kites, they lent to that to be able to happen because they're lifting. So with the foil and the kite, you could do things with looping the kite that you couldn't do, in the past with the sail. And we were on, San Francisco Bay, and the America's Cup guys were here, and they weren't foiling yet. And so they saw us, and they came on board, and they were like, "Wow, is that possible? You guys are going faster than us, just going at all, right?" So that was fun, but never really went after speed in that sense. Yeah.
Cool. Well,
I think I was on Hydropter when it was going fast in the early days, but not for any record or anything.
Yeah, and we have Hydropter in 2009. That's the last time they at 51.36 knots. That's when you guys held the record.
Yeah, those guys. Yeah.
And we can get in. Go ahead.
I think Bringdahl was on that run back then. Anders Bringdahl, he was a windsurfer.
Oh yeah, windsurfer.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we can get it. We'll further on in this discussion, we'll get into the overlap with the kind of foil technology that you have and are working on, Don, and the limitations that you're discovering there that overlaps with a lot of the stuff that Paul's been working on forever, with not just hydrofoils, but just aerodynamics and speed. And Paul, I'll ask you the same question. So I told you and Don told you when the kind of the speed record thing kind of came into your world. How about for you? When did it just first have a glimmer in your mind?
I was living in the country, and I wasn't from a sailing background, and there wasn't anyone I knew who was sailing, and we were just building little models just to sail across the ponds on the farm in summer. And so I didn't know anything else but sailing in one direction as fast as you can across a little pond, and you would just set up your boats and you would make them asymmetric because you didn't have remote controls. So you would just extend the lever arms, put more power into them, try and get them to balance and let them go. So later on, when I got into sailing and racing and Hobie cats and all that, this was, I guess, burned into my mind as being just a fascinating aspect of it. And I always knew what the fastest boat was in a dinghy park, whether it was, a Hobie 18 or a Tornado, or we saw the odd 18-foot skiff down in Victoria. But as I got more competitive, which happened quite quickly in the Hobie cat scene down there, we saw the Yellow Pages boats, the C-class catamarans, and I thought that was like seeing a spaceship. And that wing we had, that was right at the time Australia won the America's Cup, so sailing became big news, and you were dabbling in it. And then those guys obviously went and did the Yellow Pages program. So I was just fascinated by it, and that showed you, when you push the weights and levers out to the most extreme forms, that they did those incredible speeds. And so Weymouth, whenever I saw a magazine or a European magazine, Weymouth was big news back then, and it was just fascinating. It was just the most interesting thing in sailing, and I never thought, even in my early 20s, I never thought I'd have the opportunity to go and do it and participate, and things just turned out otherwise. So yeah, I was always interested in straight line efficiency and the purity of speed sailing.
It's amazing that Sail Rocket was basically the exact setup that you said on the pond. Asymmetrical, one way.
Yeah. Well, no. Well, in that respect it was, but it was nothing I came up with there. Was everything was weights and levers and riding moment and all that. And when I saw this elegant solution of these opposed forces, that everyone's going down this path, and even, I guess the kite surfing started to head down that path and bring those forces more in alignment, that it was that just hit me between the eyes and go, that's the answer. That's it right there. And, it looks so simple, turned out took 11 years to bring that simplicity back to the surface, but it got there.
Awesome. So I don't know about Don. Don, sometimes you go off the radar screen, we can't find you. But I know you guys pay attention to what's going on in the world with other people's projects and speed. Knowing what you know now on, the evolutions of the projects you've worked on, and knowing that it's been a couple years. I mean, what do we have? 2012, your record was, Paul, at 65.45 knots. I mean, that's, 9 years ago, or, whatever it is. And what do you guys see? If you just had to take a shot at it, what kind of model of those opposing forces do you see as being the thing that's going to break that record? Or is it not clear enough to be what type of craft it's going to be, but it is clear, the shape of, whether it's hydrofoils or other type of craft? Do you see anything that's starting to get clear of what can break that record and go through those barriers?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to the two different groups that are pursuing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the most interesting thing is that the technology that they have now and the material science that they have now, and they have a very different set of things available to them.
Yeah, to their tools.
That should actually allow this to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I know obviously with testing, and as you know, Paul went through all that, and you know, we just watched from the side.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it took a while for him to put all those pieces together through testing. And that, at the end of the day, my opinion is they're going to do a lot of testing, a lot of like, okay, that was partially right, but now we need to go further. Right. But I do feel that, you know, those two projects definitely have a chance to do it. It's just, you know, how much time do they need?
And that's the SP80 in the Sirocco program?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, Bruno, if you can bring up pictures of those as we go through the discussion, so we know what we're talking to. And
Don, Paul? Paul knows better.
But there's those tools that we're talking about, and I'll throw this out to both of you. Go ahead, Paul.
It's interesting. I think whether we like it or not, we're all starting to be forced into a similar box of these opposing forces. And, you know, the ultimate version, I guess the boat having, the greatest aspirations for the ultimate version would be the Sirocco boat, where you just have a tether between a hydrofoil and an aerofoil. That's the most perfect sailing boat, you know, the concept of opposing forces of wind and water you can have.
Cool.
But, you know, we had that's what Sail Rocket was based on the book of Bernard Smith, written way back in 1963, of which even when I spoke, it was fortunate enough to speak to him, even he had seen the idea somewhere else before he wrote that book. So nothing's new. Wow. But so both Sirocco and SP80 are going down that path. Sail Rocket 2 or Sail Rocket 1 and 2 were efforts to make that concept practical on a given budget and time. So we compromised that concept and we made the boat and the pods and everything. And we had the big unknown of exactly how that foil would perform. And if we could make the theory match, or make the reality match the theory. And I think that's now that we put that point on the graph and everyone knows that there's gold in the hills up there, that they can go down there and they don't have to gamble so much, so they can start using these methods that Don's talking about. You can get distracted a lot by those methods as well, because a lot of the lessons we learned were learned full scale in reality and almost by accident. Either way, when you're in the lab, you know, you often learn, make great breakthroughs by accident. One of the hard things to replicate is that you're actually in the real world, whatever you're putting down underwater, whether it's ventilated or cavitating or super cavitating, something has to hold it down beneath the water. And it's that's got to go through waves and all that mess. And that's one of the real difficult interfaces to truly replicate. And it gets harder as it gets rougher and you go more offshore. But either way, all the boats, even when I design new boats now, I end up quite similar or coming up against the same problems of stability and pitch and roll and wing weight, whether it be a kite or a wing or a wing on a wing or kite on a pole or whatever, as these guys do. And I think we all understand the same problems. We just got different takes on it. I think SP80 is the more practical one. I think that's the boat that's going to have less surprises and difficult aspects. I don't know if Sirocco isn't showing everything that they're doing there. So it's sometimes hard to make a call on something if you think people are hiding some of the info, because some of that info is the key stuff to whether that super elegant structure will work or not, or system. But yeah, I like what the SP80 guys are doing.
And do you think, go ahead, Bruno.
What do you, both of you, on the, or especially Paul actually, because your boat had a rigid wing, both of your boats. And what do you think about the solution of a kite instead of a rigid wing? Like, what's your approach on that? Because you're focusing a lot on the
I don't think
hard which is a big part of the problem. But having a kite instead of a wing, it's more a problem or a solution for you?
the boats are. It's a very valid point, because it's definitely 50% of the equation that they are aero hydrofoils. These boats, they're generating obviously equal and opposite forces with wind and water. The wing's hard to beat. The kites, we all like kites. We like the plus sides of kites. It's whether you can balance the negatives of it. They have their weaknesses in the very nature and science of them. You know, starts to get quite difficult to handle. I was amazed that they hung on to inflated kites for as long as they did for speed records. I always thought they're going to, you know, the answer is making a better kite. I'll be very interested to see what they use on these boats when they actually go down the course, and whether it's going to be, you know, just a modification of existing technology, or if they're going to go with more inflated pressure, or things that aren't very are a little bit cumbersome in the real world, but make it much more efficient for a speed record. I'll be interested to see that. But for us, the beauty of a wing is it does exactly what it says on the box. Once you've got it up and set it going, we knew exactly how much power we had, and then we just had to deal with the practical issues of it. So once again, you got to put this in the context of, you have a time and a budget, and you pick the path most likely to deliver the goods. So the wing was for us was a given.
Well, we talk about the kite, and let's talk about that, because Don, you've been working on some rigid hand wings. What do you think about Paul's comments in terms of some of the challenges with kites and these speed records?
I mean, Paul's spot on. I mean, remember I worked on power generation for like 10 years. And, you know, we started with soft kites, right? Because that's all I knew how to make. And, you know, by the end of it, we had basically, you know, a wing, rigid wing that we could quantify on the box at any time, and we could fly circles 2,000 feet away with an accuracy of a meter.
Wow.
So making circles.
Yeah.
To Paul's point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but we also had 200 engineers and, you know, flight systems that would do everything, and we would calculate everything in advance and know exactly what's going to happen. Yeah. And then we would crash $1 or $2 million wings in the process of learning, right? And we did it for, you know, 13 years or whatever.
Right.
Get there. So to Paul's point is like, of course, we want to know what we're going to get in advance. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately for the speed trials, they don't get to have fancy torpedoes under the water that have control surfaces. They don't get fancy kite or wings in the sky with fancy control surfaces that are all powered and ready to go.
Right.
The rules say, you know, whatever they say, right? But you can't do that. Mm-hmm. My thought on it is like, well, if it was me, I would actually develop everything with these control systems and then go backwards from there. So like prove it all out, because that's what we, you know, on the kite boat, it's all electronic, right?
Yeah.
So you know, ultrasonic sensors and pressure sensors and everything. And we could do things at 30 knots and then change something at 30 and then do 32.
Right.
Whereas that's the approach that I would take it, but then you've got to backtrack and go back to like, okay, we'll build this rigid wing, but now it's stable and it's got a long tail and we give it some drag, and okay, maybe you could still get to work. But you see my point though, right? It's like, it's, if you have all the control surfaces, then it's still very hard, but not as hard as what they're going to try to do.
Right.
One thing to add there from Makani is that everything that you've been doing for 13 years, it's open access, if I'm not mistaken.
It's public now. They made a really nice video. I mean, I left in 2013, but they made a video now and it's pretty crazy
Yeah.
that everyone in the world can learn from all our mistakes.
Awesome. And it's a lot of pages. So
Oh, there's a video now on YouTube. You can
Yeah.
actually watch it.
it's
on
a
YouTube.
1 hour video documentary on what you did there.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's a lot of fun, but
Now we talk about, you kind of bring up a couple limitations. One of them is budget and time, right? And the one thing I want to ask you guys, and Don, this is going to prove that I'm not I am the dumbest guy in the room by asking this, but is my impression, and you guys kind of go through this arc with me, that the limitations to these records, one of them, on the craft side of things is drag, like drag through the water, aero drag, and then you have ventilation and cavitation dealing with anything that's in the water. Strangely, we don't talk about that kind of stuff too much in the big world on the stuff that's in the air, like if there's a ventilation or aeration or cavitation, because it's in the air and it's not air and water. And then the human limitation.
Dead if there was.
Yeah. We would be. Oh, that's it. See, I told you. So drag, ventilation and cavitation, and then the human limits. So can we talk about the limits of these records in terms of those basic terms?
Paul can only answer this.
What's that?
Paul can only answer this.
Okay, Paul, give us the breakdown of what the limits are to these speed records as far as those parameters are concerned.
I think a lot of it really comes down to the human limitations, both psychological and the constraints put on them, through the cost and time factors. People have got their lives to get on with, and sometimes, if you get big teams that are cumbersome, you might keep them running for a year or two, but if the budget stops, things fall apart, and then people get their degrees and get their job opportunities and can't go and sit on foreign beaches and just ride these things out. So the human aspect, a big part of it. Also, people's motivations change. The reason why people go out there and are highly motivated to break these records is, for me, a bit of an elephant in the room, whether a team's capable of doing it or not, whether they're going to have that ongoing motivation to just keep wearing this very abrasive surface down until they win. So I look at the people behind it and how driven they are. I think that's one of the passion is everything, and it's
Paul
and
So then that's interesting, because I didn't, it's so funny. We look at this from Foiling Week and we try to be very technically driven. So what's the deal with the foil design that keeps it from, allows it to cavitate at 50 knots, or why is my aero package, what's the problem with my aero package?
I mean, the thing that Paul just said is that the most important thing is the team and the guy who's leading it. And at the end of the day, all those numbers don't matter. I mean, it's because the team and the person that's leading the charge will solve it. Right. And basically, who is the best problem solver with the budget, the time strengths, will win the race.
Right.
With these teams, I know personally SP80 guys, and I know them from the school years when I was working at the PFL and they were students. So I know how passionate they are about it. When I was machining some boards and foils, and they were actually doing the same and doing this super cavitating foils out of carbon with a block and some sanding paper to go test it on the Kite. And this was, 3 years ago. So we're still students and moving on. But the passion is there, and the team, at least on SP80, I'm sure I don't know if they're going to make it. I hope so, but they will try. They will go to the end for sure.
And I know that Alex from Sirocco, and he's held the outright speed record.
Yeah.
And I got to think that we're going to see those two groups live together next week talking about these two projects, which is going to be awesome. And my bet is that I love talking about it in this human element way. Thanks for bringing that up, Paul. that if I had to put it down on paper, I know Alex's was a competitive kiteboarder, and then he was competitive in the speed record thing. And I don't know about you guys, but most top competitors like that, if they lose something, they're hungry. So that's where passion and hunger kind of meet.
Yeah.
It gets competitive. Is it, Paul, is it a competitive?
And, I'm not worried.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm not worried about the SP80 guys. If this boat has problems, they'll come back again, and they'll come back again. I think from what I've seen and seeing Benoit when he's very young down at the Weymouth Speed Week is and just following and just thinking, yeah, like us, they'll just. And I always thought when people said, "Who do you think's going to take this record?" I said it's probably someone. It's not necessarily one of the names we know now. It'll be someone young and hungry and keen and who just sets himself up and puts himself under enough pressure where the only way out is to succeed. And it's he's got time on his side and he's already building experience and knowledge, and he seems to be able to get a team with good people around him. So these people will take it on at some stage. And I think I always said, when people who had the record before us contacted me, and I always had this feeling that you don't always, you want to beat them. You want to have your villains. You want to make out the people you're beating aren't nice guys, but these are just constructs you have in your head to motivate you to go a long way. But when these guys would contact you, I always had this thing that what you really wanted to do is you wanted to join them. You make up this construct to beat them, but you saw the cool things they did and the cool boats they sailed, and you watch these numbers go up, and you just wanted to do that one day. And unfortunately, in speed breaking or record breaking, that does mean beating them. But I look at them all. When you stand at the top of that course and it's your turn to send it, you feel a lot of respect for everyone who's done it beforehand.
That's awesome.
And I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
Last week, I had a chance to talk with Xavier, who is one of the co-founders of SP80. What he was telling me is that since they're running this project with students, so they do kind of semester projects and then they are done. They don't have the obligation to stay. The thing is, they keep going and working on the weekends, even though they have no credits attached to the project itself. And that, I think that shows. I don't know the Sirocco team, unfortunately, but I think you need people pushing like that to like keep the team engaged, even though they're not in a compromise. Like they could leave if they want, but they keep staying and working for, let's say, for free, for collaborating to the speed record.
Well, that kind of commitment brings me to my next and kind of closing part of our discussion. We can avoid like the super technical, like what causes ventilation and cavitation at 50 knots. And is that, why is this important? And so, yes, that human element actually there's the stories of the effort to do these things and achieve something, to me, makes it important enough for the greater world to take interest and learn from it and be inspired by it. The second thing that I really want to talk about is where is the trickle down from? We use that term a lot, almost overuse it. But, Don, with a lot of your stuff, you've created a lot of awesome things over the years that trickle down to recreational use. How does the efficiencies that we get from learning how to go super, super fast trickle down to products, and the way we sail and do wind sports? Can we see it?
Transportation.
Transportation.
I think Paul also has a lot to say on this, and he's thought about it probably a lot more than I have. But
yeah,
I work on things now to move people around.
Yeah.
And part of it is fun, but also at the end of the day, there's more efficient ways to use energy and stuff. And
yeah.
So I think that would be interesting. Transportation or moving goods But let Paul talk on this because he thinks about this a lot, and he has a much better take on it than I do.
Right. And you, Don, you deal with toys as well.
I don't have toys.
You don't?
I'll tell you what I have right now. I have a toy which I'm so obsessed with. I think, Paul, did you have a go-kart when you were a kid?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
of course.
So I have this great, so I'm getting old and my back is broken and all this stuff. So I've decided now that it's really fun to go like 32 knots, sitting down on my go-kart on the water and flying over waves and jumping them and then coming down the waves and then like pile driving as deep as I can underwater and somehow hang on. So in Maui, I spent the last year making an e-kart.
Nice.
It's a whirling go-kart, basically.
Yeah. How's it work?
That's my latest toy to.
Well, I can't wait to see that trickle down because there are e-kart tracks all over the ocean and bays for us. I love it.
Yeah, it's just I mean, obviously I'm getting older, so everything has to kind of be the segue. That's where I'm going with it. So that, you don't have to do anything. You just it does everything for you, and you're and now I'm 75. Eventually, and.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to see it. And Paul, what's our trickle down, Paul?
Well, there's a lot of things you learn when you build these projects, and there's a lot of concepts that you don't necessarily use in the speed sailing boat because they take away from the purity of speed, but they're clever concepts. You look at them, it might be a way of articulating a foil, the way of putting a wing up. You look at the possibilities of what Don alluded to earlier about adding more technology and coming backwards from that to make it ratifiable by the WSSRC. And after Sail Rocket, we've gone and started, exploring a few of these concepts and building models and using them. And as you build these, and don't make the focus purely speed, because actually speed is pretty stressful and hard work. We don't fly in the fastest planes or drive cars at 300 mile an hour or 250 mile an hour, whatever they do. Mm-hmm. We tend to live down at a more practical pace, but right. That we do get trickled down from these high performance craft and projects. For us, once again, as Don said, moving people or weight is the one thing that sailing needs to do to be actually viable again from a commercial perspective. And so that has become more of a focus. And, I'd love to keep going faster and faster. We've got the boat in the shed that can do it. And it's, I don't think I haven't seen any of what they're doing that's going to be any faster than what we've already done if we just take it further down the path. So, yeah. But now's the time to really take what you really learned and go and do, and go and try and turn it into something that's a lot more practical and useful and moves the whole sport of sailing forward. So, that's what we're doing now. And it's not easy. You have to be realistic about it. You get the opportunity you get your ideas and you put it together and you pitch it to some very clever people and you listen to their feedback and go away and digest, what the real world thinks of your ideas and quite often go away and change it again. But making it carry weight reliably is one of the big things. And I look a lot at what nature does and has done before. And, the one thing nature has done is pretty much completely avoid the surface of the water and live above it or below it, and it's and just dabble on the surface. And so these concepts of aero hydrofoils where that's up in the air and that's down in the water and is as little as possible on the surface is I guess, well, that's the nature of foiling week, isn't it? That you're trying to lift everything off that horrible rough surface and live above and below it. And it's a fascinating puzzle. And what's in the air really, we're excited about hydrofoils lifting us up, but aerofoils can lift us up as well. As kites obviously really kicked that door down a few years ago. But there's so many different versions. I got 4 versions open on this desktop right here of different boats and ideas and stuff based on those concepts. And it's next thing is building models and at a scale where you can prove the concepts, and then you go out and try and find a partner to take it forward. But I do want it to do some work. The next boat's got to do some work. It can't just live in the weird environment that you do with speed sailing, which is very singular and quite often impractical. The next one's got to be something you go and jump in now and take out, and it gets you places in a way that no other craft does, and that's sort of where we're working towards.
I love that. I love that focus. I know Don has done it with energy, and you've had your head down on transportation. Ian Percy, from Artemis Technologies, we've had him on. We're going to have him on again. That we realize that we're really lucky in this space, in this world that we've played in with wind sports, and to get stuff that actually does, like you said, does real work, I think is awesome.
I would just love for you guys to challenge all these groups to working towards, this problem that actually is not that hard to solve. So imagine right now we have airships, people are working on airships, people are working on electric foiling boats, people are working, with kites and all these different things. But imagine when you get a group together and you use, propulsion when it's there, use wind when it's available. And then you extract that energy and you use it again to keep going, keep your course, right? So say you got to go from A to B. So it's convenient to use the air, whether it's an airship, a wing, a kite, or whatever, store that energy, keep going and see how you can cross between 2 continents using all these technologies. Now, of course, we've got these huge, massive yachts with wings and masts and sails, and we're on version 3 now of Black Pearl or whatever the latest one is. But but they're doing it. They really are going across oceans, and people, I don't think they realize actually how efficient those sailing crafts are. Right. And if you start to combine that with, there's guys in San Francisco pulling barges. Or they made foiling barges work. I was like, they invited me over. I'm like, this is never going to work. Of course they got it to work. So, so that's the exciting time, is like, maybe next year's challenge or something in your, your symposium is to bring this up. Something that's an interesting challenge.
And Paul's project, with that, with the energy harvesting, I was thinking that when Don was saying it, the project with the PROA, transatlantic PROA. So I think, and Don is exactly right. And Bruno, let's work on that. We have the Sumoth challenge, which is starting to bear fruit right now, and we're going to see them with their craft next week, which is awesome. The Sustainable Moth Challenge, and this is just another one of those challenges where Don identified. Foiling Week brings together all these awesome people.
Paul thinks about this all the time. I can.
Well, he presented his PROA project a couple of years ago.
Okay.
but Don's right. It's bringing groups together and putting a challenge in front of everyone. And that's the Paul was just identifying in speed sailing, whether you like it or not. In speed sailing, you're in your own little group. Competing against someone else, you're not really sharing a ton. And we found that, when we get those 2 groups together next week, that's going to be interesting. And every time we bring a bunch of America's Cup designers together at Foiling Week, it's the first time they ever get to talk in 2 years, So,
are you guys having Gustav come from Candela?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, so that's a fun guy. I work with him on stuff, and that's an amazing guy. Paul, have you met Gustav? stuff from Candela?
No, I don't believe so.
Yeah.
Oh, you would love this
You'll see
guy.
him next week.
You would love this guy. You should definitely call him up. He's like, he speaks your language. Very technical. He knows every foil section, and he's done an amazing job with you know, like I was out on the boat 2 days ago, 20 knots, 20 kilowatts.
It's a car. It's like you're driving a car.
Yeah.
I was feeling that when it did. It's an awesome job that what they did.
Well, I want to wrap this up, everyone. This, as usual, we can just keep going with our cocktail party here.
Sorry.
So I'm going to end this by asking Don and Paul. Don already told us what his jam is right now, which is like the e-karting, you know, like high speed and then stuffing it.
No, that's just my personal.
Yeah. Well, I know I wanted, my last question is, when's the next time you're getting on the water and what's it going to be in?
Paul?
Well, for me, I'm fortunate enough to sail on a bunch of boats, and we're probably doing the round the island race on a mod 70 in a couple of days. But I'm starting to know all the tricks those boats have got. I've actually just started. I'm way behind Don in the toys department, but I've just started wing foiling, which is quite.
Yes.
It was not what I expected it to be. So
Meaning
when I
good or
first saw
bad?
that on the water, I thought that was the lamest look. Well, I just thought that looks lame. You know, it's slow. What's the fun of that? And then the first time I went on it and it popped up and the glide of the foil and everything. I sent an email to Don recently and just to humor him, saying I instantly went back and redesigned you know, the sail rocket concepts I was doing. So it was after spending probably 20 seconds on the foil. So you always learn something.
Cool.
And I like to dabble in as many boats as I can and concepts. So, and I'm fortunate enough to live in a way that tends to happen.
Awesome. And Don, when are you getting out on the water?
Every day.
Every day.
In an hour. I live on the water.
Cool. What's it going to be today? What's today's craft?
E-cart.
You know what I've been asked to do, and it's going to take a little bit of finessing, but I'm actually going to pull the Candela with a kite.
Wow. Because it's so efficient?
Well, I mean, I have to make a folding prop, but I think, and I mean, there's lots of reasons to try to do that, but you can imagine that you've got this platform, and I mean, we did it with the kite boat already.
Yeah, perfect.
You know, we had props on it and different things. But I think that's you know, you've got power to get up, and then can you use the kite to actually make it work? And so I think with a simplified harness, it's just for fun.
Yeah.
See if I can do it.
So you wanna pull it up with the engine and then keep going with a kite.
I mean, we might be able to do it, you know, because it's like 2,000 plus pounds, so it's not that heavy. We might be able to do it with the kite, but it's even easier if I just use the engine and then the prop folds and then just see. Yeah,
the Surfoil guys like Lyft is doing a really good job. Their folding props are getting better and better. Yeah, and the other Surfoil companies, eFoil.
Yeah, I mean, I'm riding waves for the last year, so I can last 3 hours in Maui, and I just ride waves at outer Sprex, and I don't use any power.
Awesome.
I get there, and I ride, and then no power. So I can't even walk the next day. 3 hours on the foil board, I can't walk.
It's worth it,
get
right?
a smaller battery.
So awesome, everyone. Well, hey, Don, Paul, Bruno, with your design house behind you. Thank you, everyone. Foiling Week 2021. Thanks, you guys, for still participating after all these years. This is our 12th year, right, Bruno?
12th
year of Foiling Week.
No, the 12th year. Actually, it's 12th session. Like
12th session.
Yeah, we've done 12 foiling weeks, but in the last 8 years.
Yeah, there you go. So we are still on a roll, and thanks to people like you two. And please tune into the other sessions. You're going to learn a lot. And thanks again. We'll see you at the next session.
This, guys. Thanks for doing all this work, because it's a lot of work what you guys put in to make this happen. So I think the world really appreciates it.
Great, guys.
Thanks.
Let's do some more good. Cheers,
Yeah.
everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.